Welcome to Heath Riles BBQ. On today's episode of Shooting the Q, we're going to be cooking cherry Dr. Pepper ribs per my wife's request. Now, before we get started, I'm cooking Cheshire Farms ribs on the Traeger grill today. But our butter bath has a new look, fully printed, graphic, logoed, resealable bag that tells you instructions of how to mix and cook up to 1 slab to 10 slabs of ribs. It's what everybody wanted, and you wondered what it was for. Now you're going to know. It's time to use it. Let's get started. All right, now that our ribs are out of the pack, we've dried them off is all we've done. As you can see, like they have a little bit of loose meat here hanging on from the factory. I'm gonna trim just a little bit of that. I mean, not much. Just kind of square up some of that loose meat. It's heavy fat right down on the end. It will render, but I'm gonna take and trim just a little bit of that off because I don't think all of that's gonna render down quite like you would want it eating on a good rib. So I'm gonna get some of that tissue off there, leave that alone, that'll be just fine. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on this. I'm actually gonna cut this one bone off here. I mean, that's really nothing. I'm gonna come down on this end also and square it off. Some of that loose flap meat. Now, anything on the back that you see, and you have a little bit of loose flap meat hanging here, I'm gonna put it down. I'm trying not to get my cutting board dirty. I'm gonna season in this pan. And so literally just cut that little bit of loose meat off. Out of the way, you can throw that on the grill. Call that a pitmaster snack if you wanna throw it on there and eat it while you're cooking. Now I'm gonna leave that rib over. You can see it's already skin on the back. It's got some heavy fat. That will render off. Just a quick tip. You wanna take your knife, kind of bend your rib up and get some of that off. You can see how easy it just trims off. No problem. Now, I'm gonna call those ribs good. I'm gonna leave them alone. Let's get some seasoning on them and get them on the pit. Now, some people are anti-mustard, some people are not. I would honestly, you can not use a binder, you can use water, you can use oil, you can use Pam, you can use anything you want. I'm just from Memphis, so I'm using a little bit of mustard because that's how I learned to cook. So once I've got some mustard laid down, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and grab a little bit of my hot rub to get a little bit of a base layer down. Now it's going to have salt, pepper, onion, garlic, a little bit of paprika, a little bit of chili powder. Now I'm just going to go kind of a medium coat on the back of this rib, light to medium anyway. Not too bad. Now, I'm gonna keep that hot rub about like that. I'm gonna take my cherry rub and I'm gonna come back right on top of that. Now, I'm gonna let these ribs hang out here to sweat in for about 10 minutes before I flip them over and repeat the process. So let's give it time to rest and then we're gonna repeat the process and get them on the pit. All right, it's been about 10 minutes. Our ribs have started to sweat in. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip them over and repeat the process. Now, I'm gonna let these hang out for about 10 minutes, get sweated in, and we're gonna get them on our Traeger at 250 degrees and let them go for about 2 to 2.5 hours with really not doing anything to them, letting them cook, letting them set up. We're gonna reduce our Dr. Pepper down to add to our barbecue sauce, and these are gonna be some great ribs. Let's get going. All right, we've got our ribs. They've been sweating in for about 20 minutes. You can see they're good and wet now, and so it's time to get them on this Traeger. So let's get over here and get them on. Now once we get in here, I kind of bunch my ribs up just a little bit. Makes them meatier in between the bones a little bit, and whichever way you set them is whichever way they're gonna cook. So, got my ribs on, 250 degrees where we've got the cooker set at. Let's get in here and get them cooking. Our ribs have been on our Traeger grill at 250 degrees for 2 hours. Now I wanna get in here and start spritzing with a little bit of Dr. Pepper just for some added flavor. You can see our ribs are the rub is starting to bark up. I'm gonna go ahead and spray some Dr. Pepper on this. Woo, look at that color, that cherry rub. Now, spray them down, let them keep going. They're not ready to wrap yet. All right, it's time to mix up our butter bath for our ribs. Now, I finally put these in a new pack, like I said. If you look at the instructions on the back, we have got it where you take 1/4 cup of the butter bath to 3/4 of a cup of apple juice per slab of rib. So I've put 1.5 cups of apple juice in here, and I know I need 1/2 cup for 2 slabs of ribs. So I'm gonna open my pack up, go in here this butter bath, get me 2 scoops out. Just plain and simple as it can be. I'm gonna get it on my shaker cup here. Make sure it scrolls down and shake it up. Now, this mixes very well. It don't take a lot. You can put it in a blender if you want to. You can make it ahead of time and keep it in the fridge if you want. It'll stay in an airtight container for, I say, no longer than a week. I know people that's used it 2 weeks in a row. It don't matter. So 3/4 of a cup per slab. So let's get our ribs off the grill, shake it, and wrap it. All right, as you can see, we got our ribs off the Traeger. Look at that beautiful color from that Royal Oak, 100% all natural hardwood pellets that we use in our Traeger grill. We used our hot rub and some of our cherry rub, and we spritzed with Dr. Pepper. That is an amazing color before you wrap. The bones are starting to pull back. They look beautiful. Now, as you can see, I laid my double foil down here for each slab in a pan. And what I've done that for is, so when I pour that butter bath, if you're on a pure flat surface sometimes or a little bit of an incline, the butter bath wants to run down. So you can either wrap your rib up and leave one end open and pour it in. And I'm gonna demonstrate both ways would be a better way for me to do it. So I'm gonna take these ribs, they're kind of in this pan here, hit my shake here. Remember, I want about half this because I mix it up for 2 slabs. Now, I'm gonna lay about half of this down, and I'm gonna pour some on top of that slab there. Look at my measurement, almost there. Now I'm gonna take, and I'm gonna flip this rib upside down in this butter bath, okay? Now I'm gonna take then, and just gently push that rib to one side and wrap it up. Now, when you do that, you can see that there's not anything spilt because we was in the grooves of that tray, right? Now let's take it and do a different approach. I'm gonna take this rib, go ahead and flip it over, and the backs of those ribs look good. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this end up, just like that. I'm gonna leave this end open, and you can take and pour it in. No problem. Once you get it in, just take, finish sealing it up. Now, 2 different methods of wrapping. Either one works fine. Let's get them back on the Traeger. I'm sure they're gonna have to cook about another 1.5 hours if I had to guess, because we're cooking at 250 degrees. So let's get them back on, get them tender, and get them ready for that Dr. Pepper barbecue sauce we're gonna be using. All right, our ribs have been on 4.5 hours. I've already been in here and kind of checked them. Now what I didn't do, I didn't unwrap these ribs. I just kind of took my Thermopin and went kind of in between the bones right here. And when I go in there, she's hitting 204, 205, 204, 205. She's staying right there. So I know that rib is where I need to be at. It's time to pull them off here. I'm not gonna burn my hands. I'm gonna take a clean tray right here, and I'm gonna take these ribs and I'm just gonna slide them off. I'm gonna get my grill lid shut. I'm gonna allow these ribs to cool. I'm gonna open them up and vent them for about 10 minutes. And after I vent them for 10 minutes, I'm gonna sauce them up, get them back on the pit here, and I'm gonna tell you about my barbecue sauce, but it's a little bit unique today. All right, I'm back here. Our ribs have been resting for about 10 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead now, get them out of the foil and get them laid on my pan upside down here where I can get them brushed with some sauce. So just to tell you a little bit about the sauce, I took a can of Dr. Pepper, not a bottle, a can, and I reduced it by half, which is a 12-ounce can. And so I have that right here. As you can see, there's not but about a half left. So it's a really concentrated Dr. Pepper. I'm gonna take half a bottle of my sweet barbecue sauce and add in here to this. Now, a telltale sign is when your couple big bones start busting through, your ribs should be done. Now, a lot of people are gonna say, these ribs are overdone. Well, for competition, comp guys know that they're not like that. These ribs are gonna tighten back up just to the perfect bite of a judge needs, and they're not gonna fall off the bone. Now that I've got both these unwrapped, I hadn't put any sauce on them yet. I want you to look at that color right there. That is what wins barbecue contest. 74 grand championships a lot of them in ribs, didn't come from not knowing how to get that color. That butter bath is what does that. It helps you cook a consistent product, and that's what you're looking for. So now I'm gonna sauce the back side of these with my mixture, my sauce and Dr. Pepper concentrate, and then sauce the front side, and we're gonna be ready to go back on the grill. Our ribs have been on for about 25 minutes, and I believe they're gonna be perfect and ready to come off. So let's get in here in the Traeger and find out. Oh yeah. Now this right here is a cake kind of batter knife. You spread cake batter or cake icing with it. And I use it for a rib knife. I always have on the competition trail, so that's just a little tip. You wanna pick ribs up and not mess your sauce up. You go right on the edge, scoop it right up. You gotta be careful with it. Now look at that bone pull back right there. That's what we're talking about. That bone pullback is nice. Let's get them over here to the cutting board and cut into them. All right, we've got our ribs on the cutting board. They're off our Traeger grill. They was on for about 25 minutes with the sauce on them. So just to recap, we took some Cheshire Farms pork, St. Louis ribs out of North Carolina. I pulled them out, made sure the membrane was all the way off the back, trimmed up any loose flat meat that was on the back, rubbed them down in a little bit of mustard, dust them with my hot rub and then my cherry rub, put them on my Traeger grill Timberline 1300 at 250 degrees, let them go for 3 hours. I spritzed them at about an hour and a half and almost at 2.5 hours because I felt like they needed a little bit of wetness on top of the rib. I turned around and wrapped it up in my butter bath. I showed you how to mix that on the video here, and the instructions are again on the back of the bag. I turned around and I took a 12-ounce can of Dr. Pepper, reduced it by half, added a half a bottle of my sweet barbecue sauce to it, mixed it up and glazed on top of that rib, dusted with a little bit more cherry rub and put back on the Traeger. We had a total cook time, 3 hours unwrapped, an hour and a half wrapped, and about almost 30 minutes, so a total cook time of almost 5 hours. What we done today is just a simple, good eating rib, but it's my version of a cherry Dr. Pepper rib. So one thing left to do is get in here and cut this rib, and let's try it. So let me get in here and cut it. Well, let's get in here and try one. I'm gonna go for this dead center bone right here. Oh. You got some moisture in that rib right there, what we're looking for. Saucy, sticky. I'm really digging this flavor. The cherry rub is really shining through with the Dr. Pepper, and it's got one hell of a flavor to it. You definitely need to give this recipe a try because it's going to be a hit with all your friends. That's got a really good flavor to it. If you like what we're doing on our channel, be sure to share it, subscribe, tell all your friends about it. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll see you next week with a fresh recipe.